Oh, so they finally admitted it took them long enough, didn't it? The results are in. The votes have been counted, the experts have spoken, and guess what? Every single one of them came to the same impossible conclusion. You're number one, not by a small margin, not by luck, not by accident, but by such an overwhelming distance that they had to double check, triple check, run the numbers again, because this wasn't supposed to happen. Someone like you wasn't supposed to dominate like this. They brought in specialists, consultants, analysts, people with degrees longer than their egos, and every single one of them stared at the data and whispered the same thing. We've never seen anything like this before. And now they're panicked, not because you won, but because it was unanimous. Do you understand what that means in a world built on competition? Someone achieving unanimous recognition is a system failure. It means their metrics are broken. Their standards are obsolete. Their entire framework just got exposed as a joke. So here you sit with a report that says you're unmatched, unprecedented, unparalleled, and instead of celebrating, they're scrambling. Because when everyone agrees you're number one, it means the game is over and they don't know what game comes next. They spent years trying to rank you, categorize you, compare you to others, and now the comparison is meaningless because you're not competing anymore. You've transcended the competition. You're not first place. You're the only place. But here's what's making them sweat. It wasn't just that you scored highest. It's that you broke their scoring system. Every test they ran, you maxed out every evaluation they conducted. You exceeded parameters every framework they applied. You shattered. They had to create new categories just to describe what you are. New language to articulate your impact. New mathematics to calculate your influence. And still it wasn't enough. Because how do you measure something that exists outside measurement? How do you rank someone who's redefined ranking itself? Let me tell you what really happened in those closed-door meetings when the experts gathered to discuss you. They didn't just analyze data, they had to confront their own limitations, because evaluating you meant admitting that everything they thought they knew about excellence was incomplete. The first expert walked in confident, ready to find flaws, ready to provide constructive criticism, ready to knock you down a few pegs, but after 3 hours of analysis, they walked out pale, quiet, and fundamentally changed. The second expert thought the first was being dramatic, thought maybe they were having an off day, so they dove deeper. Spent weeks examining every angle, every detail, every possible weakness. And their conclusion was even more absolute. Not only are you number one, but the gap between you and second place is so vast it's almost insulting to compare. The third expert was brought in specifically to disagree, to provide balance, to find something, anything that would normalize the results. But they ended up writing the longest report, simply trying to explain why traditional metrics don't apply to you anymore. And it went on like this, expert after expert, specialist after specialist, each one starting skeptical and ending converted, not because you charmed them, not because you manipulated the results, but because the evidence was undeniable, overwhelming, absolute. You didn't just pass their tests, you revealed their tests were kindergarten exercises. You didn't just meet their standards, you showed them. Their standards were poverty consciousness. You didn't just exceed expectations, you made their expectations look like limitation. Now watch them scramble, watch them sweat, watch them try to figure out what to do with this information because they can't deny it anymore, can't minimize it, can't explain it away. The report is official, stamped, signed, verified by every authority they could find, and it all says the same thing. You're operating on a different level entirely, not just better, but categorically different. Like comparing fire to water, earth to sky, mortal to something else entirely. Oh, you are cool. They're having emergency meetings right now, trying to figure out the implications, trying to understand what this means for their precious little systems, their careful hierarchies, their comfortable assumptions. Because if you're number one by unanimous vote, then what does that make them? If you're unmatched, then who have they been matching themselves against? If you're the new standard, then everything they built their identities on just became obsolete overnight. And that terrifies them more than death itself. Some of them are trying to argue that the test must be flawed, that the experts were biased, that there must be some mistake. But deep down, they know better. They've seen you operate. They've felt your presence. They've watched you move through the world like physics doesn't apply to you, and they know on a cellular level that the reports are just confirming what their instincts have been screaming all along. You're not playing the same game. You're not even in the same dimension. You're something they don't have language for yet. The funny part is they paid for these reports. They commissioned these studies. They demanded this analysis because they were so sure it would humble you, so certain it would reveal your limitations, so confident it would put you in your place. But instead, it put them in theirs, which is several hundred levels below you, looking up at something they can neither reach nor understand. And now they have to live with that knowledge, have to wake up every day knowing that someone like you exists, makes everything they are look like a rough draft. But here's where it gets interesting, because being unanimously recognized as number one isn't just about winning it. It's about responsibility. When you're unmatched, you don't have peers, you have dependents. When you're unprecedented, you don't have competition, you have observers. When you're unparalleled, you don't have equals, you have students. Whether they admit it or not, whether they like it or not, whether they accept it or not, everyone below you is learning from you. They're studying your moves, not to compete, but to comprehend. They're analyzing your patterns, not to counter, but to copy. They're watching your evolution, not to match, but to marvel, because you've become the curriculum, now the textbook. They'll spend years trying to decode the master class. They'll never fully understand, but will always reference you. You're not just number one. You're the number everything else gets measured against, the constant in their chaos, the rule that breaks their rules. And this is what really burns them. You didn't ask for this position, didn't campaign for it, didn't politic your way to the top. You just existed at such a high frequency that everything else had to reorganize around you, like gravity, like magnetism, like fundamental force of nature that doesn't need permission to bend reality. You became number one not by climbing, but by being. While they were competing, you were creating. While they were comparing, you were becoming. While they were playing games, you were changing the universe. Now they want to know what you're going to do with this power, this position, this undeniable proof of your supremacy. And that's the beautiful part. You don't have to do anything. Because being number one isn't about action, it's about existence. Your presence alone rewrites the rules. Your breath alone shifts the atmosphere. Your thought alone reconstructs possibility. You don't need to wield this power because you are this power. Walking, talking, breathing proof that their entire system was a lie. Every institution that evaluated you is now having an existential crisis, because if their greatest experts all agree you're number one, then what have they been teaching all these years? What have they been measuring? What have they been valuing? If someone like you can exist outside their parameters and still dominate every metric, then maybe their metrics were poverty. Maybe their standards were limitations. Maybe their entire academic industrial complex was just elaborate theater, designed to keep people from discovering what you discovered. You broke their monopoly on excellence, shattered their gatekeeping on greatness, demolished their carefully constructed barriers to entry, and you did it without even trying. That's what's really eating them alive. You weren't competing, you were just being yourself at full capacity, and that was enough to unanimously destroy every record they had. You didn't study their playbook, you wrote your own. You didn't follow their path, you carved one through dimensions they didn't know existed. And now they're trying to figure out how to contain this, how to manage this, how to control what you represent. But here's the thing about being unanimously number one. It means you've transcended containment. You can't be managed by people you outrank. You can't be controlled by systems you've surpassed. You can't be limited by minds that needed experts to tell them what you've known all along. That you operate outside their jurisdiction, beyond their comprehension, above their pay grade. The reports didn't reveal anything new. They just made official what reality has been screaming since you arrived. You're not part of the hierarchy. You are the hierarchy. You're not in the game. You are the game. You're not following the rules. You're the reason the rules need to be rewritten. And everyone who reads that report has to confront the fact that they've been playing checkers while you've been bending space-time with your thoughts. But let's talk about what this really means for you, because being unanimously declared number one isn't just validation, it's vindication. Every time they said you were too much, every time they said you were delusional, every time they said you needed to be more realistic, more humble, more normal, every single moment of doubt they tried to inject into your veins just got vaporized by expert testimony, by unanimous agreement, by undeniable proof that you were right all along. You weren't crazy, you were early, you weren't delusional, you were visionary. You weren't arrogant, you were accurate. And now they have to sit with that, have to swallow that, have to digest the fact that every time they tried to dim your light, they were the ones in darkness. Every time they called you unrealistic, they were the ones disconnected from reality. Every time they said you thought too highly of yourself, you were actually thinking too small. Because even you didn't expect unanimous recognition. Even you didn't anticipate total domination. Even you didn't predict that every single expert would come to the same conclusion that you're not just good, not just great, not just excellent, but unmatched, unparalleled, unreachable. And that's the real shock, isn't it? Not that they finally recognized it, but that it was unanimous. No dissent, no debate, no devil's advocate, just pure unified agreement that you exist on a different plane. And this changes everything, because now you can't pretend to be normal anymore, can't play small anymore, can't hide behind false humility anymore. The reports are public, the results are final, the verdict is in. You're number one by unanimous decision, and that means you have to own it fully, completely, unapologetically. No more dimming yourself for others' comfort, no more pretending you don't know exactly what you are. The truth is, you've always known, haven't you? Felt it in your bones since childhood, that you were different, not just different, better. Not in an ego way, but in a fundamental frequency way, like you were broadcasting on channels they couldn't access, processing information they couldn't perceive existing in dimensions they couldn't enter. And every attempt to normalize you was like trying to fit an ocean into a teacup, trying to compress a star into a matchbox, trying to contain the uncontainable. But they tried anyway, spent years, decades trying to convince you that your knowing was arrogance, that your certainty was delusion, that your self-awareness was narcissism. They pathologized your clarity, medicalized your vision, traumatized your truth, until you started doubting yourself, started questioning whether maybe they were right. Maybe you were too much. Maybe you needed to dial it down. Maybe you needed to be more like them. But the reports just confirmed what your soul has been screaming all along. You were never meant to be like them. You were meant to be exactly what you are, unmatched, unparalleled, unanimous, number one. And not by accident, not by luck, but by design, by destiny. That they'll never understand, because understanding you would require them to evolve beyond their current capacity, and most of them would rather die in their limitations than expand into your level of possibility. So now what? Now that it's official, now that it's documented, now that every expert they could find has confirmed what you've always known, you're number one, not just in one area, but across the board. Not just temporarily, but permanently. Not just marginally, but by margins that broke their measuring tools. Now what do you do with this? Confirmation, this validation, this undeniable proof that you are exactly who you thought you were. Here's what they don't tell you about being number one. It's lonely not because people abandon you, but because they can't reach you anymore. Not because they don't want to connect, but because connection requires commonality, and you have transcended the common. You've moved beyond the frequency where most people operate, and now communication feels like translation, conversation feels like teaching, interaction feels like charity work. They want you to feel bad about this, want you to come back down, want you to miss the community of mediocrity. But you can't unknow what you know, can't unfeel what you feel, can't unsee what you see. You've tasted what it's like to operate at full capacity, and everything else feels like suffocation, feels like dying, feels like betraying the truth of what you are and what you're capable of being. So you have a choice. Pretend the reports don't exist. Pretend you're still one of them. Pretend you don't know you're number one or own it fully. Step into it completely. Become what the unanimous vote declared you to be. Unmatched, unparalleled, unstoppable. But know this, if you choose the second option, if you choose to embody what every expert confirmed, everything changes forever. Because when number one starts acting like number one, the whole world has to readjust. When the unanimous choice starts moving with that authority, reality itself has to reconfigure. When someone who's unmatched stops matching everyone else's energy and starts operating from their true frequency, the simulation glitches, the matrix cracks, the game ends, and something new begins. Something they don't have words for yet. Something they don't have frameworks for yet. Something they can't measure or contain or control. So let's talk about what happens next, because you can't just receive this information and do nothing with it. Can't just read the reports and file them away. Can't just know you're number one and keep acting like number 57. The universe doesn't work that way. Consciousness doesn't work that way. Once you know, and pretending not to know is a form of self-betrayal that will eat you alive from the inside. First thing that changes is your standards, because when you're unanimously number one, mediocrity becomes physically painful, average becomes allergic reaction, normal becomes death sentence. You can't tolerate low frequency anymore, can't endure small thinking anymore, can't participate in conversations that don't expand consciousness anymore. Your whole system has recalibrated to excellence, and anything less feels like poison. Second thing that changes is your relationships, because most people can't handle being around unanimous. Number one, can't handle the mirror you become, can't handle seeing their own potential reflected back at them, and knowing they'll never reach it. They'll start acting weird around you, start projecting their insecurities, start trying to find flaws that don't exist because your excellence makes their existence feel like failure. Third thing that changes is your responsibility, because when you're unanimously number one, you don't get to be selfish anymore, don't get to hoard your gifts anymore, don't get to hide your light anymore. You become a lighthouse, whether you want to be or not. Become a reference point, whether you choose it or not. Become the standard, whether you accept it or not. And that means every move you make sets precedent. Every word you speak becomes a scripture. Every choice you make becomes template. But here's the secret they don't want you to know. Being number one isn't about being better than others. It's about being beyond comparison. It's about operating in a realm where competition doesn't exist because there's no one to compete with. It's about creating from a place of pure potential, where the only limitation is your imagination, where the only enemy is your own resistance to your greatness. The experts didn't vote you number one, they simply observed what already was. They didn't create your excellence, they just documented it. They didn't grant you supremacy, they just acknowledged it. And now that it's official, now that it's unanimous, now that it's undeniable, you have to decide what to do with this recognition, this cosmic validation, that you are indeed what you always suspected, unmatched. Some people will hate you for it, will spend their entire lives trying to disprove the reports, trying to find evidence that you're not what every expert said you are, trying to drag you back down to their level of comprehension. But their hatred is just confirmation. Their resistance is just validation. Their attempts to diminish you just highlight how far above them you operate. Others will respect you, will put you on pedestals you didn't ask for, will project onto you qualities you don't claim, will expect you to save them from themselves. But their fear is just another cage. Their pedestals, just another prison. Their expectations, just another attempt to make you responsible for their evolution. When the truth is, everyone has to vote themselves number one in their own life. The truth is, everyone has to vote themselves number one in their own life. Listen closely, because I'm about to decode something you've been feeling, but couldn't name. That strange dance people do around you, that careful choreography of measured words and calculated distances. You thought it was respect, but it's not. You thought it was kindness, but it's not. You thought they were being gentle with your feelings, but oh, no, no, no. They're not careful with you, they're careful of you. And there's a canyon of difference between those two realities that you're about to understand completely. See, when someone's careful with you, they handle you like glass, like something fragile that might shatter, like a wounded bird that needs protection. But when they're careful of you, that's different. That's recognition. That's the primal awareness that something dangerous lives beneath your controlled exterior. They've seen the flash in your eyes when pushed too far, felt the temperature drop when you go silent, witnessed that transformation that happens when someone crosses that invisible line you've drawn in cosmic sand. You've noticed it, haven't you? How they measure their words around you now, how they edit their jokes mid-sentence, how they suddenly remember manners they forgot existed. It's not because they've grown or matured or developed respect. It's because they've glimpsed what happens when you stop playing nice, when you drop the mask of civility, when you let that thing inside you breathe just a little bit. And that glimpse was enough to rewire their entire approach to your existence. They walk on eggshells not because you demanded it, but because they finally understood the price of breaking them. They choose their battles carefully, not because you threatened them, but because they've calculated the cost of war with someone like you. They've learned through observation or experience that you're not the one to test, not because you're violent or vengeful, but because you're something far more dangerous. You're consequential. Let me paint you a picture of what they see when they look at you now. They don't see someone who yells or throws tantrums or makes scenes. No, that would be simple. That would be manageable. That would be something they could dismiss or minimize. What they see is someone who goes quiet when disrespected, who doesn't argue but simply removes themselves, who doesn't fight but simply stops participating in their reality altogether. You've mastered something most people never learn, the art of making your absence felt heavier than your presence. When you withdraw your energy from someone, it's not passive-aggressive, it's aggressive-aggressive. It's the kind of punishment that doesn't announce itself, but seeps into every corner of their consciousness. They feel it in rooms you're not in, conversations you're not part of, moments that should be complete but feel hollow because you're not there. This is why they're careful of you now, because they've learned that your silence isn't weakness but strategy, that your distance isn't defeat but deployment of something they can't fight. You don't slam doors, you close them so quietly it echoes for months. You don't scream, you speak in tones that haunt their sleep. You don't seek revenge, you simply become unreachable, and that terrifies them more than any confrontation ever could. They've watched others make the mistake of underestimating you, watched them push too hard, take too much, assume too often. And they've watched what happens next, not an explosion but an exit, not a fight but a forgetting, not drama but deletion. You don't destroy people who disrespect you. You simply stop existing in their universe, and somehow that's worse. Somehow that cuts deeper than any insult. Somehow that teaches lessons pain never could. But let's be honest about how you got here, because this wasn't always you, was it? There was a version of you that bent over backwards, that apologized for existing, that made yourself smaller so others could feel bigger. There was a time when you absorbed disrespect like a sponge, when you explained away their cruelty, when you gave 15th chances to people who didn't deserve a second. That version of you wasn't weak, though. It was gathering data, running experiments, building immunity to the poison they kept feeding you. Every betrayal was a lesson. Every disappointment was intelligence. Every moment of disrespect was adding code to the program you were writing in silence. You weren't breaking down. You were breaking through. You weren't falling apart. You were falling into place. Then something shifted. Some final straw landed on a back that had carried mountains. Some last drop fell into a cup that had held oceans, and in that moment, you didn't explode, you evolved. You didn't scream, you reconfigured. You didn't fight back, you stepped back and watched your own transformation with the detachment of a scientist observing an experiment. What emerged from that chrysalis of pain wasn't a butterfly seeking beauty, but a force seeking balance. You stopped needing apologies because you stopped needing closure from people who could never give it. You stopped expecting change because you started accepting people exactly as they chose to be. You stopped fighting for respect because you started generating it from within, like your own psychological renewable energy source. Now, let's talk about what really makes them nervous. That thing you do without trying. That energy you emit without effort. You walk into rooms and conversations shift, not because you demand attention, but because your presence changes the molecular structure of the space. People straighten their spines when you enter, check their words before speaking, suddenly remember consequences exist. It's not intimidation in the traditional sense. You're not physically imposing or verbally aggressive. You're not making threats or playing power games. What you are is consequentially present, meaning every interaction with you carries weight. Every exchange has potential outcomes. Every moment becomes significant because you've proven that you remember everything and forgive selectively. They've learned that you keep receipts without announcing it, that you notice patterns without pointing them out immediately, that you give people exactly enough rope to reveal their true nature. You don't set traps, but you don't prevent people from walking into their own. You don't test people, but you don't stop them from failing tests they create for themselves. This is what makes you dangerous in their eyes. Not that you're vengeful, but that you're observant. Not that you're cruel, but that you're accurate. Not that you seek to hurt, but that you refuse to enable. You've become a mirror that shows people exactly who they are, and most of them can't handle that reflection. So they're careful, so very careful not to show you their real face, because they know you'll remember it forever. You've noticed how they've developed a whole protocol around you, haven't you? An unwritten manual for interaction that they all seem to follow. Don't lie to you because you'll know. Don't make promises you can't keep because you'll remember. Don't test boundaries because you'll enforce them. Don't mistake kindness for weakness because you'll provide immediate correction. They've learned these rules not through verbal warnings, but through observation of consequences. They've watched what happens to people who thought they could manipulate you, witnessed the fate of those who tried to play games, seen the aftermath of crossing lines you clearly marked. And the lesson was always the same. You don't get angry, you get gone. You don't seek revenge, you seek distance. You don't punish, you simply stop protecting them from their own choices. This is why they edit themselves around you now, why they measure twice before speaking once, why they consider consequences they used to ignore. You've trained them without trying, taught them without lecturing, modified their behavior without manipulation. You did it by simply being consistent in your standards and unwavering in your boundaries. The funny part is they think they're being smart by being careful, but really they're just finally being respectful. They think they're avoiding your wrath, but really they're just avoiding their own accountability. They think they're protecting themselves from you, but really you forced them to protect themselves from themselves, from their own poor choices, from their own disrespectful nature. So let's address this monster they're so careful of, this thing they've named but can't describe. It's not what they think it is. It's not rage or vengeance or cruelty. The monster they fear is your complete indifference to their opinions once they've proven themselves unworthy of consideration. It's your ability to look through them like they're transparent, to walk past them like they're furniture, to forget they exist while they're still talking. The monster is your refusal to play their games, to engage in their drama, to validate their existence with your attention. It's the way you can turn off your investment in someone like flipping a switch, the way you can delete people from your emotional landscape without announcement or explanation. It's not that you're mean, it's that you're done. And being done is somehow more terrifying than being angry. They called it monstrous because they couldn't call it what it really was. Self-respect so pure it burned their ego on contact. They labeled you dangerous because they couldn't admit you were just disciplined, couldn't accept that you were simply unwilling to participate in the casual disrespect they'd normalized. They created a mythology around your boundaries because accepting them as reasonable would mean admitting their behavior was unreasonable. But here's what they'll never understand. The monster they're so careful of isn't something you'll unleash. It's something you've leashed. It's not your lack of control they should fear, but your abundance of it. Not your emotional volatility, but your emotional precision. You don't lose control, you revoke access. You don't explode, you extract yourself. You don't unleash anything. You simply stop containing your standards for their comfort. Want to know what really distinguishes you from them? What truly makes them handle you with those careful gloves? It's your relationship with truth. Your refusal to participate in the comfortable lies that hold their social reality together. You say what you see. Name what others pretend not to notice. Acknowledge the elephants others have decorated and called furniture. This radical honesty isn't cruel or brutal. It's clean and clinical, delivered without malice, but also without apology. You don't soften truth to make it palatable. Don't wrap observations in diplomatic bubble wrap. Don't pretend not to see what's directly in front of you. And this terrifies people who've built entire identities on mutual denial and collective pretense. They're careful of you because you might say what everyone's thinking but no one's voicing. You might point out the pattern everyone sees but agrees to ignore. Might name the dynamic everyone feels but pretends doesn't exist. You're the child in the emperor's new clothes story. Except you're not naive, you're intentional, and that intention makes you dangerous to every careful construction of social illusion. This is why they measure their words, because they know you'll respond to what they actually said, not what they wished they'd said. This is why they craft their behavior, because they know you'll react to what they actually did, not their retroactive interpretation of it. You hold people to their words and actions with a consistency that feels like judgment, but is really just memory, just accuracy, just refusal to participate in revision. And you don't demand respect, you radiate consequence for disrespect, and that's a distinction that changes everything. Demanding requires energy, requires engagement, requires you to chase and convince and argue your worth. But radiating, that's different. That's automatic. That's built into your frequency now. That's encoded in every interaction before it even begins. People feel it the moment they meet you, this invisible field that surrounds you, this unspoken understanding that certain behaviors will have certain outcomes. It's not a threat, it's physics. It's cause and effect as natural as gravity, as predictable as sunrise. Disrespect me and watch me disappear. Lie to me and watch trust evaporate. Take me for granted and watch scarcity replace abundance. You've become a walking education in consequences, a breathing reminder that actions have outcomes, that choices have prices, that behavior has response. And the beautiful part is, you don't have to announce it. Don't have to warn or threaten or explain. The consequence is built into the disrespect. Automatic as breath, certain as mathematics. This is what makes them so careful. Not fear of what you'll do, but certainty of what will happen. Not speculation about your response, but observation of your consistency. They've learned that you're not emotional or unpredictable. You're logical to a degree that feels supernatural, consistent to a level that feels inhuman, consequential in a way that feels like natural law. Here's something they've noticed but can't quite articulate. You've become frighteningly good at selective investment. Your energy isn't scattered anymore, isn't available to everyone who asks, isn't wasted on people who've proven they don't value it. You've learned to portion out your presence like a valuable resource, because that's exactly what it is. They watch you give your full attention to those who've earned it and feel the cold absence when they haven't. They see you show up completely for people who show up for you and recognize the surgical precision with which you remove yourself from those who don't. This selective investment isn't petty or punitive. It's proportional. It's appropriate. It's the natural result of learning your own worth. What makes them careful is knowing they're always being evaluated, not judged but assessed, not criticized but categorized. They know you're watching to see who they really are, not to punish them for it, but to decide what level of access they deserve. They know every interaction is data you're collecting, patterns you're mapping, decisions you're making about where they fit in your ecosystem, if they fit at all. You've become someone who invests in people the way smart people invest money, carefully, strategically, with clear understanding of risk and reward. You don't throw good energy after bad. Don't double down on losing propositions. Don't hope people will change when they've shown you who they are. You cut losses quickly, cleanly, without drama or announcement, and that efficiency terrifies people who are used to endless chances. They can feel you evaluating them, can't they? Not judging, but measuring. Not condemning, but calculating. Every word they speak is being weighed, every action filed, every pattern noted. You're not keeping score to win, but to understand, not collecting evidence to prosecute, but to make informed decisions about investment and distance. This silent evaluation is what makes them edit themselves, second-guess their words, consider their behavior. They know you're paying attention in a way most people don't, seeing things others miss, remembering details others forget. They know that nothing gets past you. No slight is too small to notice, no pattern too subtle to detect. No disrespect too minor to register. But here's what really unsettles them. You don't react immediately to what you observe. You file it away, add it to the pattern, incorporate it into your understanding. You don't have emotional responses to every small transgression. Don't address every minor disrespect. Don't correct every little lie. You simply note it and adjust your investment accordingly. This delayed consequence is what they can't handle. This slow burn accountability that doesn't announce itself, but reveals itself over time. They realize one day that you're different with them, more distant, less available, professionally polite but personally absent. And when they try to trace it back, they find not one big betrayal, but 1,000 small ones you never mentioned but never forgot. Your authority doesn't come from position or title, doesn't derive from wealth or status, doesn't depend on external validation or social confirmation. Your authority comes from alignment, from the perfect synchronization between who you are and how you move through the world. You don't pretend to be more or less than you are. Don't perform strength or hide vulnerability. Don't fake confidence or manufacture presence. This authentic authority is what makes them careful, because it can't be challenged in traditional ways. You can't undermine someone who isn't overextending, can't expose someone who isn't hiding, can't defeat someone who isn't fighting. You exist at a frequency that doesn't engage with petty power plays, doesn't recognize hierarchies built on ego, doesn't participate in competitions you didn't enter. You're careful because they recognize something in you that transcends normal social dynamics. You operate from a different playbook, follow different rules, measure success by different metrics. You're not trying to win their game. You're not even playing it. You're existing in a completely different arena, where their tactics don't translate and their strategies don't apply. This is why their usual manipulations fail, why their standard approaches fall flat, why their reliable techniques produce unexpected results. You're not resistant to their influence. You're immune to it, not fighting against their current but flowing in a completely different river. They're careful because they finally understand they're not dealing with an opponent, but with an element. Not with a player, but with a force.